of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here tonight with Bruce McCurdy. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, David. How are you doing tonight?
I don't know. I'm okay. I'm fighting off my fourth cold or whatever it is of the winter. So, yeah. I'm a cold magnet. I'm as bad as Connor McDavid in that regard, and not as good as him in any other. All right. 3-2 loss to the best team in the NHL, Bruce. A stifling checking effort by the Boston Bruins. Edmonton had just 6 grade A shots, and only one of them was a 5-alarm shot. Boston.
I can guess which one that was.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Boston, on the other hand, had 11 grade A shots and 5-alarm shots. They were clearly the better team, and absolutely, they did what the Oilers can't do. In the third period, Boston just shut down the Edmonton Oilers, except for, strangely enough, on a 3-on-5 penalty kill, which we'll talk about as well. This is our 2 good things, 2 bad things, and 2 numbers podcast. Bruce, what is your good thing?
Yeah. Can I do a good thing and bad thing and just roll it all into one?
Sure.
That would be, well, I still want my bad thing later, but that would be Klim Kostin in this game. The Russian winger who finally got back into the lineup after, was it 4 or even 5 games? I think it was 5 games on the sidelines. He came up sick for the Rangers game, and then they called up Shore to replace him next game, and Shore played 4 games, and he got sent down just before the game, which meant Kostin was good to go. And he went. And he was certainly one of the most noticeable Oilers in this game, and much of it was good, but 2 or 3 critical instances was not good at all. And one of them was early in the game when he just completely failed to pick up his man. Who was it? Thomas Nosek, the dreaded Thomas Nosek. Well, even if you leave Thomas Nosek alone in front of the net, he might put it in. Like most of these NHL players. He might actually put it in, and he did. And Edmonton's only lead of the night was gone after 13 seconds. 13 seconds they held the lead in this game. And there was an issue there of a bad, like a double clearance from Nurse to Desharnais and up the boards towards Puljujarvi, where one of the new Boston guys that they just got in the trade, Dmitry Orlov, stepped in front of it and worked it up the boards. He passed it behind the net to the other new guy that Boston just got, Garnet Hathaway, who made a great deflection pass into the slot. And there's Klim Kostin sort of sleeping 5 feet away from the dreaded Thomas Nosek, who takes advantage to tie the game at 1-1. So not a good start at all, and you expect rust from these guys coming back from time off for whatever reason, and I'm not sure he got on the ice a whole lot while he was sick. It's kind of hard to know. But he looked rusty, but boy, did he look energized as the game went along. And he was credited officially with 3 hits and no shots, 1 assist, with an even plus-minus and 6 penalty minutes. That was Kostin's night. The first penalty was the hook and call 3 minutes after Edmonton got their one and only power play of the night. The refs had to square that account, so they called one on Kostin. Anyway, they killed it off, and it was actually an exchange of penalties. So it was a 4-on-3 at the end, and they killed that off, and Kostin came out of the box just as Ceci fired one down. And Kostin, he was starting to come back into the play, but he just busted butt, and he beat the Boston defenseman to the puck to negate the icing. And better still, he actually controlled and handled the puck and did what he wanted with it, which is something that didn't happen much for Oilers in this game. And what he wanted to do with it was just make a short backhand pass to an on-rushing Connor McDavid, who was coming on a line change in the slot. And just like that, it was McDavid alone on the Boston goaltender, Jeremy Swayman. And Swayman was pushing one way to go with the pass, and McDavid just made the easy deke the other way and deposited home. And it was But it was all Kostin that was the reason that chance even happened. So that was a big goal that tied it 2-2. And in between times, he was just crushing guys with hits. He hammered one guy along the end wall. I'm trying to remember who the heck that guy was. Then he crushed um, Hampus Lindholm right into the players' bench, the Oilers' players' bench. That was a kind of funny sequence where Lindholm basically got bent over and wound up in the laps of McDavid, Draisaitl, and Fogle on the Oilers' bench, where he did not receive a friendly welcome, but a collective GTFO shove from the Oilers' bench back onto the ice. That was kind of a humorous moment. And then there was the one in the third period where he took the big run at David Krejci, and Krejci pulled up and Kostin missed him but hammered Krejci's stick, which then bounced up and hit Krejci in the face. And the refs originally called a 5-minute major on Kostin with like 5.5 minutes left, or 7 minutes left, and you're thinking game over. And then they looked at the replay and correctly deduced that Kostin never actually touched Krejci at all. He just hit his stick really hard and he got a bad bounce from Krejci's perspective. So they exonerated him and sent him back to the bench, only for Kostin to then, unfortunately, take and probably deserve a 4-minute penalty with 4.5 minutes to go in the game for a very careless high stick. So this was the night of Klim Kostin, just terrible mistakes and tremendous energy and a couple of real terrific plays. And so I'm going to call him my good thing just because he was probably about the most noticeable Oiler out there for the time that he spent, which was, Klim, where are you? 8 minutes and 43 seconds.
His play on that first goal against Bruce was one of the worst in a year where there's been no shortage of horrendous defensive decisions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's going down the slot with that guy, and all of a sudden he peels off and lets him go in all on him, Nosek, all on his own. That was just inexplicable. It was an inexplicable brain fart by Kostin. And, well, what else can you say other than that? As for the Krejci,
he thought the puck was going behind the net when it was passed, and then Hathaway made that really good deflection pass into the slot, and he just didn't see it coming.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that's it.
That, but he should have still stuck with the guy until he knew for sure what was coming.
Yeah. Then Krejci, the worst moment for Krejci wasn't getting hit in the face with the stick. It's when the ref reverses the call and goes to center ice and announces to the whole stadium, yeah, David Krejci, no penalty there. Dumbass hit himself in the head with his stick. That was
not
embarrassing.
Quite, but yeah, that would be the Boston player hit himself in the face with his stick. Now, why would he do that?
That was really blunt and funny. All right, Bruce, my good thing is Connor McDavid. And this is the second game in a row where he's tried to will his team to victory. Been outstanding on the ice and just has come up short. Once against Columbus, the worst team in the league, and now against Boston, the best team in the league. He came blazing down the ice early in the game and fired in a shot, which for any other player, almost any other, maybe Nate McKinnon and a few others, wouldn't be a grade A shot. But we know from watching Connor McDavid, when he comes down the wing that fast and shoots as hard as he does and as tricky as he does, those are grade A shots. Those shots will go in more than 20% of the time. They'll go in at least 25% of the time. And he scored. He does it again and again and again. And hardly anyone does that. I mean, you'd think players shooting from the dot, I used to think way back when that players shooting from the dot, that's a grade A shot, but it is not. NHL goalies stop that consistently. Taylor Hall, when he was with the Oilers, always was getting that kind of shot and hardly ever scored. But McDavid scores. He scores regularly on it. You've already described, the 50th goal, his first 50-goal season.
Not that part for you.
Beautiful. And then perhaps the highlight of the game was the 3-on-5 at the end, where he and Draisaitl came so close twice to tying the game up. And that would have been so good. I mean, Boston had a 3-on-5, so they might have scored right anyway to get a lead again. But holy moly, that was exciting, Bruce. You know, once I think the puck popped to Draisaitl in the Oilers' end, and he quickly got at McDavid. McDavid rushed up the ice, and he was just going to feed Draisaitl, probably for a goal, knowing how Leon can finish. And a great back check by a Boston player took that away.
Patrice Bergeron, the multi-time Selke Trophy winner, showed his stuff a few times in this game. Man, what a fantastic player that guy is. He's just outstanding. And he was the guy. I mean, you could say he got caught on the play, and Boston, for whatever reason, had 5 forwards on the ice with a 1-goal lead. And like that, I just don't understand. And anyway, the forwards were, among them, David Krejci and Patrice Bergeron, who both made huge defensive plays on shots or would-be shots that never made it through to the goalie. And that was Bergeron who came hustling back to get his stick into the lane and bust up that McDavid to Draisaitl.
I think, Bruce, they have 5 forwards out there because the Boston coach just can't imagine what's going to happen with McDavid and Draisaitl on a 3-on-5. He just doesn't know how quickly that can go bad. And he quickly found out
there.
They broke out again, and I think it's Draisaitl taking the puck up the ice, drops it to McDavid, who puts it over to Nurse, and Nurse gets off a great shot, which deflects off. Is it Krejci's stick? It doesn't hit
stick.
the net.
It basically
just
just above the hosel of Krejci's stick, so on the shaft of the stick, and the. I call it the hosel. That's a term from golf, which is the place where the club and the shaft meet up. And anyway, or the heel of the stick, some would say, but the hosel's above that. And it's a lot of puck luck to have a puck hit you there on a shot, because that's a pretty narrow. That's like one of those shots that hits the shaft of the goalie stick above the blocker, where it could go anywhere to either side of it, and it just happened to hit it square on. Nurse did not miss that shot. I had a good hard look, slow motion, everything. That puck was labeled for the short side corner. Maybe Swayman stops it, but all I can tell you for sure is that David Krejci did stop it.
Boston was the better team, but this game was very close too. And it was a good game until Boston kind of gave it the old Python hold in the third period. They just didn't give up anything until that 3-on-5. And all right, Bruce, you've already done your sneaky bad thing. What is your official bad thing?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Kailer Yamamoto missing the target, or being unable to get a shot away from prime scoring area, not once, but twice in this game. One really early in the first period. It may have already been 1-1. I don't have a timestamp on it. But he got a super pass across the goal mouth, and he was about 4 feet from the frickin' net. And somehow he fired high and or wide from right in tight to the net. And then there was another one where I thought he'd whiffed it, but this was one time I will exonerate him, because the great Patrice Bergeron came back to lift his stick just at the moment he was trying to one-time it. But then there was another one early in the third period where, again, Yamamoto had the chance from right in close, and he just kind of whiffed on the shot. And he was able to recover it and cut back in front and get a shot. But the second shot, there was an actual goalie there, whereas the first one he had net to shoot at. And I mean, this is a guy who's got 5 goals all year. Like, you're getting paid to be a goal scorer, man. You got to put the odd one in the net. You got to, just to get 0 shots out of those 2 setups is just not acceptable. Hit the damn target, hit the puck, and hit the target with it. Anyway, I'm sure he's angry about it, but I'm not going to make excuses for him. He needs to score on one of those plays, because Edmonton was having so much trouble to get great chances, and when they did get them, Kailer Yamamoto missed them twice.
Well, the puck is round, the ice is slippery. I'm forgiving on those two plays. He did get a nice shot, real quick shot on net right after he missed the shot in the third, and he snapped that nice shot on net from in tight.
But the goalie was there by then.
The goalie was there. Yeah, he's not Mike Bossy or David Pastrnak.
Nope.
And yeah, not great. I'll give you
5
that.
goals all year. We've all been ripping on Jesse Puljujärvi for his 5 goals and for his inability to convert around the net well. That's not just his problem, let's put it that way.
Indeed. Bruce, the first goal against was really bad, and we've already ripped Klim Kostin for that. The second goal against was also a thing of badness. Edmonton's rushing the puck up the ice. Tyson Barrie, defensemen are allowed to do this. He's going to go to the net, and he's in good position. He's ahead of Draisaitl on the play. Draisaitl's kind of lagging back a little bit. And so Tyson Barrie rushes in. They cross the blue line. Tyson Barrie goes to the net. And McDavid is going to deke the Boston defenseman and then put the puck to Barrie. But as he's attempting that deke, he gets knocked off his stick. Offensive zone turnover at the blue line, which often leads to bad things. And this time it leads to a 2-on-1 rush against the Edmonton Oilers. And to his credit, first of all, Leon doesn't cover for Tyson Barrie, so that's why it's a 2-on-1. So Leon makes he just should have been a little bit more aware that it's a 3-on-2 already, and he's got to be a bit more careful. That's a tough play, though, on a certain level. But McDavid does come hustling back really hard, right up the middle of the ice. And then he realizes that the puck's passed over to the wing, and he heads over there. Unfortunately, Kulak is headed to the same player. Both McDavid and Kulak converge on the same player, whereas the player that was charging up the
goal scorer, the other
goal
guy?
scorer, Foligno, Kulak lets him by, and I blame Kulak on this one. The player who got the pass to, I can't remember who that was, who took that pass. He was not in a scoring position. He was just over the blue line. He wasn't in danger. The danger man is the guy charging to the net. And McDavid is also, they didn't communicate. They didn't talk to each other. So, but McDavid was in good position actually to catch up to that guy and stop him if Kulak only realized that. But he was moving up. He just took a couple steps towards that guy. And meanwhile, Foligno sneaks in behind Kulak, takes the pass. And, here's a game where the Oilers make, Zacha and Foligno, and who was the other goal scorer? Zacha, Foligno, and Nosek look like, Bossy, Esposito, and Brett Hull, just by giving them these wide open looks. And Kulak has been playing pretty strong hockey in the last month, 6 weeks. He's really stepped it up. Not to the point where the Oilers aren't looking at acquiring. It looks like acquiring a second pairing left shot D man. Seems to be high on their list again. But geez, it was a goal that didn't have to be, and it was a series of small mistakes, and then a big mistake by Kulak, I thought, that led to it. And you can't do that if you're going to beat the Boston Bruins. You can't have those errors. I mean, such a fast game, such a difficult game to play. So, there's that to consider. But they got it. This is why they're in the NHL making the big bucks, including Kulak. And he's got to make that play.
Yeah, I blame the lack of communication between the two there. Kulak is coming back, preparing as if it's 2-on-1, and then McDavid comes flying back so fast. But as you say, right up the middle of the ice, and he doesn't commit right or left. He's coming right up the middle of the ice. And as the puck goes over to Charlie Coyle, who was the playmaker here, McDavid suddenly cut towards Coyle at the exact moment that Kulak suddenly cut towards Coyle. And there was never a finger pointed or a shout or say, I'll take him, if you take that guy. I mean, I'm sure you do this in your beer league hockey. When you're facing a 2-on-2, you talk to your partner.
No, we don't. No.
Oh, okay.
Bruce, you're asking a lot of beer league hockey players.
Okay. Anyway, there was no there didn't seem to there certainly was no sign language of the pointing type that you often see on these sort of plays where you're not outnumbered, but you're kind of you're not really lined up with them. And the guys coming at you do a crossover or something, and you got to make sure you don't both go to the same. Well, they both went to the same guy. Bam, in the net. Just like that. Bam.
Oh, yeah, just like that. Bam. Yikes. Not good. And then it's 2-1, right? Like you get off to this great start, you get the early lead, and now you're down 2-1. Good work. I mean, they're way more disappointed than we are, I'm sure, but we're disappointed. Bruce, what's your number?
Yeah, well, I got two numbers tonight, David, but they're from the same column, and they are 6 minutes and 4 seconds and 19 minutes and 45 seconds. And this is the time on ice afforded to Jesse Puljujarvi and Kailer Yamamoto in this game. And I saw Puljujarvi pretty good in the little tiny bit of the game that he played. He had 2 shots, 2 hits, takeaway in 6 minutes. And he had one terrific sequence where he jumped on a loose puck in the slot, fired a zinger of a shot that you probably call a grade A, but not a 5 alarm because it wasn't close. But he tested Swayman, and then he was all over the rebound, forced Boston behind the net, and Boston came out the other side and came back up the ice, and it was a developing 3-on-2, and they tried to cross ice pass, and who's busting his butt on the back check? But Jesse Puljujarvi. He picks off the pass, immediately chips it back north, and all of a sudden the Oilers are going the other way on a 2-on-2. I'm thinking, geez, that's a heck of a nice shift. I hope the coach noticed. Well, apparently he didn't, because Jesse got 6 minutes in this game, and Yamamoto got a few ticks below 20. And it's not because of power play or penalty kill time, because there wasn't much of that. Yamamoto got under a minute on each unit, but and Jesse, of course, got nothing at all. And I mean, if you're going to go with this 11-7, I thought the whole idea was to rotate guys through the fourth line and get them involved in the game and not leave them rotting on the bench. Derek Ryan, he played 6 minutes and 32 seconds in this game. And he's been a good contributing depth forward for Oilers for weeks. He's been playing really well. And they coaching just took him right out of the game, both these guys. And I just don't understand it. And it just leaves me scratching my head about the decision-making process of the head coach in terms of allotment of ice time. And from this particular game, the way they were going, which Yamamoto had a penalty, he missed those 2 shots. He played with energy, he did some good stuff. 3 shots, 2 hits. So, and 3 times the ice time, he got 1 more shot than Puljujarvi, same number of hits, and 1 fewer takeaway and 1 more giveaway and a penalty. And anyway, I'm baffled a little bit about Puljujarvi. He's been criticized, and with good reason, for much of the season, but this last number of games, he's been good. And it just doesn't seem to be resulting in much in the way of increased opportunity at all.
Mm-hmm. They could have taken some ice from Hyman. Like his legs were not going.
Mm-hmm.
Early in the second period, if you had benched Hyman for a couple of shifts, put out Puljujarvi, that would have sent a message, because Hyman, he usually is a hustling hockey player, but he just wasn't in this game for some reason. He just wasn't effective. He had a couple good shifts in the third.
Yeah.
But the first 2 periods, he got nothing done in a game with, his kind of game, gritty game for veterans. Nuge didn't get a lot done, but at least Nuge was really digging in. Can't say the same about Hyman, so I wouldn't have mind seeing Puljujarvi get a few shifts there. I agree with you, Bruce. That was, now Yamamoto played a lot. I don't think they're showcasing him, but his name has come up in this latest trade rumor with Matthias Ekholm, so we'll see what happens there. We'll see what happens there. We can talk about this. We'll talk about this in a second.
Sure.
Bruce, my number is 5, and that's the 5 block shots that Vincent Desharnais had on David Pastrnak in the third period, including 4 of them in 34 seconds in Boston's power play. Desharnais is a great defensive hockey player. Well, that's too much to say. In the brief time that I've seen him, in the small sample size that I've seen Vincent Desharnais, he's coming across as a great defensive hockey player, or at least a very good one. He hits, he plays his position, he blocks shots, he takes people out in front of the net. He's exactly what the Oilers needed in terms of a penalty-killing player. And I'm starting to think I'd like to see him every third shift. He just comes across as a solid hockey player. He's like a 6'7" Chris Russell out there, giving everything he's got. And he got hurt on a couple of those shot blocks, but he just keeps doing it and doing it and doing it. And some of those shot blocks, Pastrnak can fire the puck, and he just kept getting in the way. Yeah. They have a real find here in Vincent Desharnais. They're going to have to move out a right shot defenseman this summer if they don't do it before then in a trade to give this guy a regular shift next year. He's going to be playing regular. He's going to be the third pairing, if not higher, defenseman on the Oilers next year from what I've seen so far. And again, it is a small sample size, but it's getting larger, Bruce. It's 16 games now, and he's +9. And by our metrics, the way we track hockey too, major contributions to grade A shots for and major mistakes on grade A shots against. He's every bit as good as that +9 goals for differential. He's really shutting down the opposing team in a way that we haven't seen from an Oilers D-man this year, honestly. So good for him.
This year for a while, really.
Anyway, Larson and Russell.
Larson, I guess, yeah, fair with Russell, but not in the same style, for sure. And 2 hits and 5 block shots for Vincent tonight. And after those 4 block shots, the one thing he did was he blew his cool a little bit. After the 4th block shot, and I'm sure his hand is stinging and probably his foot is sore by then. And Matthias Janmark tried to clear the zone, and he got, let's say, mugged by some Bruin. I don't know if any particular rule was broken. Certainly there was no rules against Boston mugging Oilers in this game, which they did very effectively. I mean, hats off to them that they really play a smothering defense. But Janmark was unable to clear that puck, and it went back into the zone to Pastrnak again, and Desharnais just wound up and hacked him on the back, which is when they're already a man short.
Yeah, not the best idea.
2.5 minutes to go. You'd think that would end their last chance, but in the end, they got a couple of chances on that 3-on-5. But Desharnais' first shift was the play where he and Nurse couldn't get the puck cleared, and his last shift was that. But in between times, he blocked all those shots. And, I agree with you that he's a rising young player, and he's not that young. And I think for that reason, he's maturing right into the NHL pretty quickly. He's seen his hockey. He's maybe getting used a little bit to the higher speed and skill at this level, but he sure seems to be in the right place a lot.
It's interesting, Bruce, because people were hankering after a couple of physical players, like a big physical defenseman and a physical forward. Mm-hmm. And it seems like Kostin and Desharnais have really answered the bell in that regard. They both, Kostin can play a bit of hockey. He's very aggressive. Desharnais the same thing. So that that need is really being met, which I think really does leave it open for the Oilers to, I think if they're going to make a trade, what they should be looking for is a top 6 forward or a top 4 D-man. Just to really, go for it. The West is wide open. All these teams are just coin flip who's going to win this series. And with McDavid and Draisaitl, who knows what's going to happen. Of course, the Oilers' goaltending is another thing. And that the player the Oilers might want to acquire is a goalie. Like, I'm not even ruling that out. You never hear that mentioned. But the way that Campbell's playing, you can't count on him in the playoffs at this point. And if they could trade for a goalie, like, I don't know if Joonas Korpisalo is available or someone like that. So it's unlikely that they could get a goalie. I'll say that, but I wouldn't mind them. So the player that they're mentioning is Matthias Ekholm, and I want to get your view on it. Just quickly, my view is he's 33 in a few months. He earns $6.5 million a year for the next 3 years. He is a very good player right now, but he's playing a minute less a game. In Nashville, his scoring's down a bit. His time on ice is down a bit. I'm a little bit worried about a player being past his best before date. At the same time, he's still a vital player this year. He's a top 4 D-man in the NHL. That's what his time on ice and points per 60 suggest. What do you think? I mean, what's your take on him, Bruce?
Yeah, he's been like 23 and a half minute defenseman for Nashville for years on end. Holy moly.
He's down a bit this year.
This year he's down to 21.44, bum.
Yeah.
And his scoring is down, as you say, not that much, but about a little. Like, he's not a big scorer, and I don't think he's everything he does is on the power or on even strength at this point in his career. They got Josie, of course, running the show on the power play there.
He does get on the power play. He gets about a minute and a half a game.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't get any points there. Let's put it that way. 3 assists. Okay. There you go. Anyway, I've always liked him as a player. The 6 1/4 I find scary at 3 years, and the trouble with 6 1/4 is the Oilers are in this, people are going to hate me now. They're in this situation where this has to be dollar in, dollar out. And I will concede that it's possible to buy down the dollars coming in for the dollars that are going out. But when those dollars being bought down or have term associated with them, that is not easily done. And it's very, very difficult to get a third team involved in buying down any contract that isn't, just a rental expiring at the end of the season, where they know they got the cap room, they know it's only a few bucks, they got a free draft pick out of it. Well, if you're buying down 3 years on Matthias Ekholm or 4 years on Erik Karlsson and you're a third-party team, you're basically saying, give me your dead cap for 4 years. And any GM worth his salt isn't going to be, Arizona might do it, but any other team is going to say, well, we're going to be contending before then. We're going to need that cap room for ourselves. We can't be trading that. And so you have to buy it down from the original team. And maybe in his case, but if you can't, $6.25 million, that's 2 of the $3 million class players, which are really the only Oilers in position to be traded. And if you trade 2 of them for 1 of him, well, guess what? Now you got a 19-man roster. So it's a problem. They got a 20-man roster. They're basically capped out. I think they got $500,000 now just because of the transactions of Holloway and so on when Yamamoto came back. But they haven't got enough cap space for a 21st player. So they've got, not only do they have to do basically dollar in, dollar out, but they also have to do player in, player out. They can't be doing a 2-for-1. And if you get an expensive player, well, they haven't got enough cap to trade because all of their guys over $5 million, all of them are on no movement clauses, and they're core players that are the actual identity of the team. I mean, who are you going to trade? Connor McDavid, Darnell Nurse? Don't answer that. Leon Draisaitl, Zach Hyman, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Evander Kane. I mean, these are the Edmonton Oilers. They're big 5 forwards, they're stud defensemen. There's no way they can trade Jack Campbell, who has a no-trade contract. And Tyson Barrie, the only way I could see them trading him would be in an Erik Karlsson trade, where you got his replacement coming in that's going to play the first power play and play the offensive minutes at right D. Otherwise, you trade Tyson Barrie just to make room for Matthias Ekholm. Well, now who's running your power play, and what guarantee do you have that power play is going to keep ticking along at 32%? So I don't see them trading Barrie except very explicit circumstances. So now you're down to your $3 million guys, and there's 5 of them. There's Yamamoto, Puljujarvi, Foegele, CC, and Kulak. And if you're getting Janmark, well, you trade 2 of them back, and all you're doing is breaking even. And like I say, you got a 19-man roster. If, on the other hand, you go for Chychrun and $4.6 million, maybe you ask Arizona to include the big forward Bukestad in a 2-for-2 and say, you guys have your pick off of the $3 million list. You can have one defenseman, or you can have one forward or two forwards. You just can't take both defensemen. You choose, and you send us these guys, and then we'll haggle over what the, what the plus is. But from the NHL roster, such a trade would basically be $5.5 to $6 million out, $5.5 million in, and you can actually do it, stay under the cap, and keep your 20-man roster.
So you think the Chychrun deal makes more sense than Ekholm
well,
because of the...
unless there's retention, but like I say, Nashville, you think you're going to get Nashville? Maybe they retain 25% on Ekholm and get him down to 4.6, and you try and then structure the same kind of a trade where you get a useful second guy to come back and you trade them 2 mid-level contracts.
Bruce, I could see Barry going for Ekholm. I think it would be a risky move for the Oilers.
Yeah.
But it's it makes a certain amount of sense. I think one of the things about Ekholm is he's not. I don't think he lives up to his contract, and I think that might be generally accepted. So when you're training for him, you don't have to give up as much just to get him, because he presents a risk and an overpay for the next 3 seasons. That's got to be part of the thinking of what happens. So the price for Ekholm, maybe himself, he's not even that high, because Nashville needs to rebuild. They got to move him out. They want to probably move out the salary. They want to get something, a future player in return. The expensive thing with Ekholm from the Oilers' perspective will be the cap space. So if they can get Nashville to eat like, $1.5 to $2 million a year, that's what's going to cost them a first-round draft pick. So the price could be Tyson Barrie and, let's say, a Reed Schaefer, or the Oilers' first pick this year for Ekholm. And now that's a risky move, because Tyson Barrie is a decent player at even strength. He's okay. He's not bad, and he's outstanding on the on the power play. And Bouchard, as much as I like Evan Bouchard, he's not showing it this year. Maybe he would step up and on the power play. I mean, he just doesn't look that sharp running the power play this season. His shot is not getting through this year for some reason, and so risky move. But you're gonna have to take a risk if you're gonna win the Stanley Cup. I don't see the Oilers making that trade. And in terms of, and I want to make this clear again because it needs to be said often, when I'm talking about these trades for players on other teams, we put in a lot of work at the Cult of Hockey to properly evaluate the Edmonton Oilers players. We do video review. We discuss the scoring chances. We keep track of it. We keep careful notes. We look at the key plays repeatedly, trying to figure out what happened, who did what. We do not do that. I don't do that for players on opposing teams. Because I do that on the Oilers, I have a certain amount of confidence in our system for rating the Oilers players. I don't have any confidence in my take on Mattias Ekholm this year. I'm not a credible person in terms of saying what his real value is, because I haven't put in that kind of time, which NHL teams and scouts do. But other people talking about these trades on the internet, you can be almost rest assured they don't do. So I just you have to be wary. Like, hopefully the Oilers have a really good assessment of Mattias Ekholm. John Shannon was saying today on Oilers Now, he sees, other than Karlsson, Ekholm the top defenseman on the market. And maybe, like, that's possible, but I just wonder. Like, I don't know that, and I don't think you can tell from his stats necessarily. Maybe his scoring stats are artificially low, but he's made a lot of really good plays, and they just haven't ended up as goals. That's what it's like with Bouchard.
Forwards.
Yeah, that's what it's like with Bouchard this year at even strength. Bouchard's been involved in a lot of grade A scoring chances at even strength. He's orchestrated a lot with his passing, but they haven't gone in. This can happen to a player. So again, I just don't know. I can't say what kind of value he really has, but I don't know. I don't know if that's the right move or not. I mean, I really like Philip Broberg, and one of the other options is that Brett Kulak goes, Bruce. Yeah. If you're trading for a defenseman who's got 3 more years on his deal, you'd want to move out Brett Kulak, I think, and and maybe then Yamamoto, they can take their pick plus a first round draft pick for the salary retention. So and maybe something more, I don't know. someone like a second pick. I don't know what it would take to get Nashville to budge. They certainly drove a hard bargain when they traded 5 goal scorer, what is it, Travis Janot to Tampa. I'm not criticizing though Tanner Janot. I'm not criticizing the deal because
Tampa knows what they want and they're prepared to overpay for it.
They've got a pretty good record the last few years, so I'll just hold my fire on that one, I'd say.
Well, they brought in Barclay Goodrow and buddy in Calgary now, Blake Coleman, as inexpensive depth forwards when they won their 2 cups because they both had a year of term left. And last year they brought in Hagel from Chicago and Nick Paul from Ottawa. That was a terrific pickup for them, and they went deep in the playoffs. This year they're bringing in Tanner Jeannot, and what they just seems to be looking for is hard men to play at the bottom of their roster to make every line of theirs really tough to play against, and it's worked. So I think they way overpaid for Jeannot. So the odd thing is Jeannot himself is an undrafted player, but he got traded for 5 draft picks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rounds, one in each of the first 5 rounds, spread out over 3 years, and also a pretty good long-term prospect for the Bolts that's never quite been able to cut into their defense, but might really have a chance in Nashville. The actual player they got back, which was what's the kid's name? He's the son of a former NHLer.
Foot, Cal Foot,
yes,
is it?
Yes, Cal Foot, Adam Foot's kid, and he's never quite broken through, but that's been a pretty tough defense over the years. So even there, so they got essentially 6 assets for one, and the one is going to be his contract's expiring at the end of the year, and they have obviously RFA rights, but $800,000 contract's a beauty for this player, and that's what they're focused on. We got to fit him under the cap. We need some guy near the minimum who can really play, and they picked him and they paid for him.
You know who's hurting right now is the Ottawa Senators. Thinking, why do we give up Nick Paul for a 4th-round draft pick and Matthew Joseph?
Joseph's okay, but
he's got 13 points in 40 games this year. He did have 12 points in 11 games when he went to the Senators last year, Matthew Joseph. But they're thinking, man, we could have got that. I mean, it is an amazing amount of picks. The one thing about Jeannot is he does have a low amount of goals this year, but he's had a really low shooting percentage. So you might be able to get him on a value contract next year. And this might be, Tampa may have this in mind, in that he's an RFA. And it's not just this year they're trading for him. They're going to get a player they can probably sign for a fairly low amount of money next season as well. Who scored, I think, like 22 or 23 goals the year before when he shot 19%. So they're looking at a guy who probably is going to score about 10 to 15 goals a year and not earn very much money next season. And that makes sense for them as well. So that's, I think, another reason for the high price there.
It's still bizarre. I mean, you can make a pretty good argument that Tampa paid more for the one player than Boston did for the 2 guys that they got out of Washington that helped beat the Oilers tonight in defenseman Orlov and forward Hathaway. Man, that would have been a beauty ad for the Oilers. Those same two players in a package. Yeah. Or then we saw the one today where Toronto got McCabe. And they also got Sam Lafferty thrown into the same deal. And Chicago's going to retain 50%. And Chicago's going to wait till 2025 for the 1st-round draft choice. But the Oilers couldn't even compete on this front because McCabe had a no trade clause that he applied to all the Canadian teams except Toronto, and Toronto wound up getting them. But and then the third one, also Toronto, where they got Ryan O'Reilly. And on the side, they got Noel Cherry thrown into that trade. And so in each case, the teams didn't just trade for one they did trade for one feature player, but they got a second darn good, proven, relatively inexpensive, solid bottom 6 forward sort of thrown in as part of the deal. And I got to say, Mr. Ken Holland, pay attention. This is your way forward. The only way you can do that, I can see that you can balance your roster and balance your payroll you're going to get a feature player, get a good cheap player, and trade back 2 mid-level players, meaning that list of 5 $3 million contracts. It's the only ones the Oilers can move. Because if they move a $1 million guy, they're not gaining anything at all because they're paying whoever replaces them the same amount. And the 5 million up guys are off limits, as I mentioned before. So the list of guys he can trade is very, very short. And unfortunately, most of those guys have had their struggles this year and don't have huge trade value, I don't suppose. So it's he's in a tight space, and people are dumping all over the guy. And on one level, I understand because he signed some of these contracts. He signed Jack Campbell, which is a big problem right now. And but he's I mean, he's just dealing with the realities that the top end of his payroll is locked in for years. They've all got multi years. They've all got no move contracts. So he's only really dealing from the bottom of the deck. And he's got to find some kind of fit. Like I like the one that I mentioned earlier with Bukestad would be the second player where you're getting a real good sort of useful player type that the Oilers would need at $900,000. And the other guy, you wouldn't even need any retention to pull off that trade. You just trade straight up. 2 guys from this list from the Oilers for those 2 guys from Arizona, and it's balanced. And then whatever else that you have to pay is not coming off this year's team. So that's the only sort of logical way. I mean, talking about getting in $10 million players, you can get 2 teams to retain, and who are you going to move? Anyway, it's been kind of frustrating, and I think Holland's taken a beating worse than he deserves at this point. And I would just say this: let's wait until Friday, say 1:30. Let's give him a half-hour grace and see what happens when the dust settles, as opposed to dumping on the guy every time some other team makes a trade.
Yeah, let's wait till Friday.
Yeah.
And then we'll get out the baseball bats.
Yeah. The torches and pitchforks, all that stuff, but Friday.
I don't have strong feelings about the trade market because yeah, we'll see what happens. I hope they make a good deal. We'll see. He's made some good deals. I mean, he brought in Kane. He got Nugent Hyman on good deals. It hasn't been a total horror show with Ken Holland running things. So Cody, I like Cody Ceci as a player. I think he's on a good contract for his level of play. Tyson Barrie's been a good signing. So yeah, Jack Campbell, that's really hurts, but maybe he can still turn it around. God, let's hope he can. Bruce, let's leave it there for tonight. Thanks for talking.
On to Toronto on Wednesday night. Thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.